Here's a joke credited to Eddie Gorodetsky. Guy goes down to the beach and finds a bottle. He rubs it, and out pops a genie. "I'll grant you 2 wishes." The guy says, "I thought it's supposed to be 3 wishes." Genie says, "Look down your pants." The guy opens up his pants. "Wow." Genie says, "I've been doing this a while." I've been doing this a while too. This is me at about 13 years old, a couple of years after I started drawing and making watercolor paintings of the marshes and clam beds south of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I'm from. I was awkward, smiled a lot, and could pick up AM radio in my teeth. My nickname was Sea Monkey. Nothing has changed. I never intended to be an artist. I never intended to make art. I still can't stand that word. If your goal is to make art, it will probably end up looking like someone else's. Anything self-conscious usually sucks. Make things, not art. When I was at the College of Charleston School of the Arts in the mid-'80s, the faculty didn't know what to make of me. I was like a tornado, wide at the top, sucking in everything around, and funneling downwards to a focused, destructive point. The School of the Arts offered me unlimited access to the woodshop, costume department, music labs, theater props, ballet, early music, and the sculpture foundry. It was like a gigantic buffet. During my entire 4 years at the College of Charleston, I never heard the word no, not even once. It made all the difference. With that freedom, I made ambitious painted environments that I installed throughout the public spaces of the building in the middle of the night. I didn't ask for permission. I just did stuff. These kinetic, three-dimensional paintings incorporated my love of Baroque art with action painting. My subject was the act of forcing things that don't go together, together. These pop-up installations climbed the walls onto the ceiling and crept across the floor. Not even gravity stopped me. When you're naive and fearless, you're bulletproof. People couldn't get from the doors to the elevators without navigating through my painted environments. The entire building was my working space. There were some complaints that I was too aggressive, but no action was taken. The dean and the faculty had my back. For my senior thesis, my professors led a group of advanced students around the 4th floor studios for group critiques. Part of my success today comes from never having read any reviews of my work or anything else with my name in it. My dilemma was this: how could I be present in a group crit without being present? My solution was to build a massive 5-sided painting assembled into a box that I could hide inside, unbeknownst to my professors and peers. To take my experiment to its logical and pretentious conclusion, I decided to strip naked and be totally vulnerable inside the box. Thanks, Allen Ginsberg. Art is a form of containment. But it's important to remember that a container not only keeps stuff inside, it protects stuff from the outside. Protect yourself. Protect your time for work. Be your own best friend. Pierre Mondrian wrote about the discord that arises from the fact that, as human beings, we are neither part of nature nor are we able to exist without it. Art ameliorates this tension by allowing us to do things that we can't do in real life. In a Shakespeare play, an actor applying fake blood and collapsing on stage isn't glorifying death, but celebrating life, because he, she, or they aren't really injured. Art cheats nature. A little note on my studio door read, "I'm not here, please discuss." So the faculty led an entire critique of my work, and I heard every word, good and bad, from within the protective insulation of my painting. They all thought I was absent, but I was inches away from them the entire time. Here's some advice, though. If you ever decide to hide naked inside of one of your paintings, keep your clothing with you. I didn't account for people to linger, and I looked like a dirt ball crawling out of the painting, hunting around for my pants. No matter, I still made my 3 points. Thought kills action. Experience is more important than achievement. And everyone should do one foolish thing every day. There is no upside to a fear of failure. If you're afraid of being embarrassed, then you should not work in the arts. The playwright Anton Chekhov wrote, "If you see a gun in a play, it has to be fired by the end." Everything I do now was already apparent and set way back then. I paint because I made a promise to that 10-year-old that lives inside of me to protect him, the one they call Sea Monkey. Some of the most valuable lessons I've learned as a painter were not from art school, but in the real world. For example, soda cups. Imagine 3 sizes: large, medium, and small. The human mind craves variety. It's like the way a comedian structures a joke. 2 intervals to establish a rhythm, and then 1 to break it. You can see that in this new painting of mine, where I establish a repeating rhythm, and then I break it. Never repeat the same 2 things in a painting.
Let's see how my soda cup rule applies to color, form, intensity, and value. On color, there is a large proportion of blue-green, a medium amount of red, and just a speck of bright red. Here's a painting I'm currently working on, but you can already see the soda cups. There's a large amount of purple, a medium amount of green, and a small amount of bright orange. On form, there are large, medium, and small shapes. On intensity, most of this painting is dull in intensity, with a few medium saturation areas and 1 spot of high intensity. This usually marks the focal point. On value, dark to light, here's a trick. Reach into your pocket, pull out your smartphone, take a photo, and then hit edit to see it in mono. Seeing your painting in black and white will reveal your proportions of dark, medium, and light value. Don't make any 2 proportions the same. If your composition is interesting in black and white, then it will be interesting in color. Spaghetti is a wonderful teacher. Which is more beautiful, cooked or uncooked? The English painter William Hogarth, 1697 to 1764, referred to the line of beauty, which posited that serpentine, S-like curves provoked emotions of liveliness and aesthetic pleasure, as opposed to rigid lines. Note in these examples the use of the S-like curve. To paraphrase the philosopher George Santayana, beauty is the cooperation of pleasures, truth the cooperation of perceptions. Aesthetic pleasure is part of daily life. Who wants to set an ugly dinner table for their guests?
Who arranges pillows on a bed to look gross? When you take a selfie, do you really want to look like Shrek? Or do you adjust the angle and the lighting to not look like Shrek? If it looks good, it is good. But don't overthink. If your goal is to create beauty, you'll probably end up with attractiveness. Likewise, if you reject beauty, you're still screwed, just as a door is still a barrier, no matter on which side you stand. I replaced trying to create beauty with pride and craftsmanship a long time ago. Learn your materials. Make a lot of work and destroy all of it. Give up on amateur words like inspiration and originality. They are unreliable. There is nothing new under the sun, I assure you. The only thing you can rely on is a work schedule. Ideas start with action, and the most important action that an artist can commit is to show up. Day after day, year after year, decade after decade, show up in your studio, regardless of the results. Creative is not something you are, it's something you do. When I was a kid, my brothers and I spent a great deal of time in Myrtle Square Mall. Two things there made a big impact on me. One was a local magician named Ron Conley, who performed and sold magic tricks on a blue velvet table under the massive clock that festooned the center of the mall. I watched him for hours and bought whatever tricks I could afford. Sometimes he'd wink and show me the secrets so I could go home and make the props myself. He's still working today. Second was a booth that made dipped candles. You know the kind, where you dip a blank form into various pots of colored wax and then carve into the warm skin to reveal prismatic curls. I remember the smell of paraffin and the heat bubbling up in cups of gooey color. I spent blissful hours eating caramel apples, watching a magician and a candle maker. My goal for life was to open my own candle and magic shop in the mall. I'd call it Wicks and Tricks by Brian. I love when a business features the owner's name, like Tomato Pie by Gino or Flowers by Louise. However, South Carolina law clearly stipulates that you have to get through puberty to get a lease. So I kept painting at home on our back porch. Myrtle Beach, in the late 70s, offered no exposure to the fine arts. The first artist I ever met was me. I love libraries and made good use of the art history section at Chapin Memorial Public Library and devoured it shelf by shelf. I still remember it was the 700s in the Dewey Decimal System. I was too young to drive, so a few days a week my mom dropped me off after school and picked me up with my eyes glazed from overstimulation. On the way home, we stopped at Krispy Kreme donuts. I still associate art history with those brown blisters of dough. I learned to spell Picasso like I learned to spell dessert. Double S's for double helpings. The public library was the ideal place to begin my art education, not only for what I could understand, but for what I misunderstood. When you read about something for the first time, the transfer of information is not always accurate. For example, to my 13-year-old brain, Italian mannerism meant saying please and thank you with an accent. To me, the golden section meant the soggy, warm center of a cinnamon bun. I'm not kidding. I blithely mispronounced everything from chiaroscuro to Bernini. And I remember my parents would joke, "Where's your grammar?" "On the back porch with Grandpa," I'd answer. Reading art books teaches you to crack the skull of the artist and think critically, to think against yourself. But you can learn a lot in the gaps between misunderstanding and comprehension. For example, I loved looking at pictures of Watson and the Shark, 1778, by John Singleton Copley. But I was too young to pick up the signals of fear and redemption embodied in the action. I was unaware that, to the British, the shark was a metaphor for the colonist rebellion, and to the colonists, the shark represented the British government. And the boy's nudity was a metaphor for the helplessness felt by both political parties. I had no idea that Copley's harpoonist was lifted from Raphael's St. Michael vanquishing Satan, 1518. Yet the power and excitement of the composition made me squirm in my chair. I knew what good looked like. I just didn't have the skills to make it. Artists live in those gaps between what we see in our minds and what we actually create. When young artists ask me if it's important to be exposed to great paintings in the flesh, I answer no. Not every town has an art museum, but every town probably has a public library. Use it. Misuse it. Read physical books about painting theory, but don't feel pressure to get it all the time. After all, painting is visual. It's meant to be seen, not read. It's like trying to describe sweetness to somebody when you can just give them something sweet to taste. Galleries are lined with paintings begging us to figure them out or fear mediocrity. That's art school bullshit. Misinterpret, misunderstand, and misuse. Everything you get wrong becomes your voice. We all grow up wanting to be Beyoncé, and we get depressed when we're not. Don't be great occasionally. Be good consistently. Keep your expectations low, trust your gut, and remember, when one door closes and another opens, you're probably in prison. I believe that art is difficult to explain because it's unnatural. Water is natural. Combine hydrogen and oxygen and you get water. It's easy to explain. The same goes for gummy bears or tractors. You can explain them. Art is a socially constructed concept created by a culture. Money is also a socially created concept, but it has clear boundaries. Art has hairy boundaries. This is both a feature and a bug. When my teachers would say, "Bri, art is whatever you want it to be," I was bummed for days. That's how you speak to a child. I craved rules. Creativity comes from boundaries, not freedom. Duct taping a banana to the wall isn't brave. It's a spectacle aimed at the crowd, not the individual. However, making a pencil drawing on paper with lines that come alive is brave, because you're inventing within limitations. Creativity is the magnification of limitations. What's your intention and how will it be executed? Purpose is more powerful than inspiration. Inspiration is an outside stimulation to feel or do something. Purpose is a white-hot fire within yourself. Pushing paint around without purpose is zombie painting. What is your work about exactly? I'll bet you a cold beer that you've known the answer since the first grade. As the novelist Philip Roth advised, don't invent, just remember. Use your telling voice, because eventually you'll utter who you really are. Every utterance starts with action. Describe your action in a single phrase of 5 words or less. My action is embarrassingly simple. Standing here while looking there. My subject is the landscape, but my content is a function of how near or far something appears from your face. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Art evokes without representing. Coherence is not the same as resolution. Philosopher Nelson Goodman writes that when an object functions as a work of art, it provokes emotions that it does not literally possess. Goodman uses the example of a stock graph, which conveys the same information as a set of numbers. Yet, when drawn as a graph, the zigzags suddenly awaken another part of our awareness through shapes and patterns. We make ships in bottles, you and me. A work of art has no practical purpose. It doesn't heat homes or purify water. Yet, like a ship in a bottle, a work of art is the most like itself, open-ended and eternally in the present tense. I was in the Museum of Modern Art the other day with one of my best friends, the sculptor John Raimondi, and I came across this small kinetic object by Alexander Calder, called Untitled 1934. It's just painted wood, wire, sheet metal, and a tiny motor, the same junk you'd find in any garage. My eyes welled up with fat tears. I was flooded with images of my son and daughter scattering seeds, then tapping them with their toes on the grass-skinned lawns where we went and cannot go again.